Hi there, it's Melissa, and I am in my temporary summer studio in Wisconsin recording some music theory videos. And in this video, this is part 2 of the Georgia State Music Theory exam for level 3. So this is part 2 of the level 3 Georgia State Music Theory exam. So if you're one of my students and you're taking this exam, I'm going to show you exactly what to do and where to go. So what you're going to want to do is, if you can see the chat or if you can click to open up the chat window, I have a link for the Georgia Music Teacher Association website. You'll click on that and you'll go into the website, and I'm going to show you now when I share the screen how to find the proper test. So sharing my screen here, and you should see pulled up now the home screen of the GMTA, and you'll go to the far right where it says student activities and go most of the way down to theory. Click on the theory, and that will bring you up to a page that will show you all the different theory options. Now there are two buttons here. There's the GATE exam, which you do not want. Do not click on the first button on the left. Instead, go over to GMTA theory test. Click on that. And that will take you to this page. And you'll find on the left side ear training audio files. We'll go over those in another video. And down on the right hand side, you'll find tests going back a good 10 years or so that are sample tests along with answer keys for all of the tests. So you have plenty of tests to choose from to help yourself get more practice at all of the levels. Now, when you click on a test, you're going to click for today's video on the 2017-2018 theory test. It also has the answer key. I just want you to go to the blank test because that's what we're going to work from today. Now again, I said this is part 2 of the level 3 theory exam. So what we're going to focus on is level 3 of the 2017-2018 state theory exam. So go ahead and click that link, print it so that you have something to write on, or make sure you have it up on your screen and you can take notes on scratch paper. So I'm going to pause for just a moment while you do that. What it should look like though when you get to it, when you click on it, is this page. So once you open the file, let me go to the beginning of the file, it will look like this, and it will say level 1 on page 1. You're going to scroll all the way through level 1, through level 2, and now we're at level 3 on page 11. Keep scrolling. We'll do the ear training in another video. You can find that elsewhere. The part 2 written exam on page 3, actually page 13 of the document, was also covered in another video. So if you need help on page 3, you can find that in another video. And in this video, we're going to work on page 4 of the exam, which is page 14 in the document. I realize that's a little bit confusing, but you're going to scroll all the way to page 14. This section of the exam is not very long, but there's a lot to explain. So it's going to take me a little while to get through these exercises. So what I want you to do right now is make sure you click on that link in the chat. So hopefully you'll see it there in the chat. And then when you're ready and you have your test printed and you have a pencil available and some scratch paper, you can come back and restart the video, and I'll walk you through each section of this page. Okay, welcome back. So what you should see on your screen right now on the video is a blank grand staff, which is where we're going to do the teaching and the actual work and the practice for solving these theory problems. And then you should have in front of you or on a screen, you should have pulled up page 4 of the level 3 GMTA theory test, which is also, if you're on a screen, page 14 of that particular document. So I have my theory test on the screen over to my left here, and I'll be using the iPad to draw and teach you about how to find the correct answers for these sections. So let's get started. Again, make sure you have some scratch paper handy. You might need that, and you can follow along. So section K starts with, given the major key signatures below, identify the root position triads using Roman numerals. Remember to use uppercase for major and lowercase for minor. So let's review a few things here quickly. When we're talking about Roman numerals, we're talking about chords, and when you want to identify the chords in a scale, we use Roman numerals. So, for example, if I have the key of F major, and I have a triad built on the tonic note, the first note of the scale, the F, that chord is called my 1 chord. You can also call it the tonic note for that scale is F. Okay? But I'm just going to erase that, whoops. I'm going to erase that word tonic just because I don't want to confuse you right now. Okay. So that would be the 1 chord in F major. I will write F major up here just so that we know what key we're in. And of course this chord is an F major chord, but it's the 1 chord. Now if I wanted to write the next chord in the scale, it would be that chord. It is a minor chord, so I'm writing the small Roman numeral 2. Now again, I'm just demonstrating how these chords would be written. You can find this information if you have your scale book, your Alfred's scale book. If you turn to the F major pages that have the scales and the chords, it'll be on the top of that second page of your scale section for F major. You can find this information on the top of that second page where it does the chords in the scale. That's all I'm doing here. And so then your next chord, if I continue up the scale, I'm just building on the root notes here. We're just going up the scale. The next chord is a B flat major chord. It is the 4 chord. The next note in the scale is C. No sharps or flats. That is the 5 chord. Okay, so we're at F major, the 1 chord. G minor is the 2 chord. A minor is the 3 chord, so we again have a small Roman numeral because it's minor. B flat major is the 4 chord. C major is the 5 chord. Now to finish this out, we're going to have D, F, and A here. Doesn't exactly look like a snowman. We'll make that a little better. That is the 6 chord, and it's D minor. You can hear that, D minor. The 7 chord has the B flat. It's going to be hard for me to draw that flat up there because I'm so high, but imagine that this B up here is a B flat. So I'm just coloring it in black. This is actually the 7 diminished chord. And then of course, if we wanted to go all the way up, we would do another F major chord, and that would be back to the 1 chord. So that's just review. That's where the Roman numerals come from. Boy, that does look like a snowman with a hat on top. Sorry about that. But the most important chords here that you're going to be able to identify, or that you need to identify, are going to be the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. You do still need to be able to find the others, the 2, 3, 6, but those 1, 4, and 5s are the most common. And if you know those, it will make your life much easier. Okay, so that's our review. We're going to erase, maybe, if I can move that over. We'll try to start over and actually start this first one here. It doesn't want to, you know, technology is a little slow sometimes. Okay. Sometimes you just have to go back and then come back in. It's like reset. Power off, power on. All right, so we're going to go to medium. I'm just going to do single staff here. There we go. Okay, that gives us a lot of room to work here and manipulate these chords. Okay, so section K. Let's go back and review the directions. Always read the directions, super important. Given the major key signature, the major key signature are the letters that you see in front of the lines. So your first major key signature is D major, and then they have a line. Okay? So D major, you have to get in that mindset. And what are the, you know, scale chords? What are the chords in D major? It says identify the root position triad using Roman numerals. So you have to think about what are your D major chords. Well, it's really helpful to have scratch paper, and really helpful to either have your circle of fifths drawn on your scratch paper, have a keyboard drawn on your scratch paper. You can easily draw yourself a keyboard. I'm not going to take time to do much of this, but you can draw a couple of octaves pretty easily, right? You get the idea. You can continue. Just sketch out a keyboard for yourself, and that will help quite a bit. Make life easier. Let me erase this for now so it doesn't get in the way. But you have to think about the key of D major and what are your chords in D major. And sometimes I like to start with a chord cadence, but I'm going to show you another way to do that as well. Okay? So the first thing I think about is my D major scale, and in my D major scale, this has actually a treble clef, so we're going to use a treble clef symbol for that question. And I'm going to go ahead and write my key signature for D major here as I do this particular problem. Just so that I remember, if I have a chord that has F and C sharps, and if I'm working through this problem, I remember that I do have F and C sharps. Okay? So I'm in the key of D major, indicated by my clef and my key signature. But the chord that you see there is not a D major chord. So first I'm going to draw the chord that is given on the test. And I'm going to identify the root of that chord. And remember, anything in a triad position, the bottom note that I've just highlighted names your chord. Let me do this in black. So we have a G chord. Okay? And we also know it is a G major chord. There's no F sharps or C sharps in that chord. It's G, B, and D. So that's the chord they give you on the test. What we have to figure out, though, is it the 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 3 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord? What is it in the scale? So if you know your chord cadence and you know the chords, the primary chords in your scales, like this, you might be able to figure it out right away by the chord cadence. And, you know, I know my scales and my chords very well, so I would automatically go, oh yeah, that's the 4 chord. in root position. And I would put the Roman numeral 4 on the line and be able to answer that question correctly. But what if I don't know my scales and chords very well? Then here's the way to figure it out. What you want to do is start with drawing at least some of your scale notes, not the whole chords, but the notes, up to the chord that's given. So I'm going to start on a D because we're in D major. There's my D. I'm going to draw an E. I'm just drawing scale notes. There's my F, and remember it's an F sharp, and now here's my G. Now I'm going to think about if I were to build, chords on top of these, right? I'm not going to take time to do that, but if I were going to build chords on top of these, this would be the 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 3 chord. See how I'm doing this? And now this G, which is next, and the chord that they gave us, that's the 4 chord in D major. So the correct answer to put on the line is the 4 chord. Okay? So you first have to identify what the chord is and then figure out, based on the key they give you, which chord in the Roman numeral sequence that chord is. Let's do another one and see if it helps us understand. So the next key we have, also in the treble clef, we have B major is the key that they have given us. Okay? And again, if you don't have your circle of fifths memorized, or you don't know your scales well, this could be a little bit tricky to figure out. But I know my scales and I know my chords and my key signatures, so let's take a crack at B major here. We have F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. Now if you get this far, you know that you're in E major. And if you also know your order of sharps, F, C, G, D, and if you know what comes next, what's the next sharp? A, right? So now if I add a sharp, whoops, if I add my A sharp, I'll have the correct key signature written. Alright, that's my key signature because I know my order of sharps. I can figure this out. If I don't know my scales and keys completely, I can figure it out because here's my order of sharps, right? It's the order of flats backward. Okay? So now I know, okay, these are all sharp in B major. And again, you can think about your keyboard. And you can think about all the different possibilities here, all the different notes here. Okay? And there's my 1 chord. Now, let's go to the triad that they give you. So they give you a B, a D, and an F. And what they've done is, let me erase this top. Erase a little bit of this here. What they've also done is they've given you an F sharp here. Okay, so that's the chord they've given you. So now what you have to do is identify the chord. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is, again, look at the root of the chord. And I'm going to say, well, That is indeed a B major chord. That's the root. Or it's a B chord. We haven't decided yet if it's major or minor. So there's the chord B, D, and F sharp, and they've indicated F sharp. Now, if it's a B major chord, the D should be sharp, but they haven't indicated that. So we have to think about the Roman numerals. If it's a minor chord that they have written, we'll have to use a small Roman, but let's work this through first. So the B chord in B major would be identified as the 1 chord. And actually, for this particular exercise, that's as far as you have to take it. All you have to do is identify the, it says, given the major key signature, identify the root position triads using Roman numerals. Uppercase for major, lowercase for minor. Now, we can see that this is a minor chord. So we know that it's the first chord, but we've also been told that the key signature is a major key signature. So there's another possibility here, which is that it can be, because they've written it as the minor chord, a small Roman numeral 1. Double check the answer key on this one, because this one is a little bit tricky. This is not a great example, actually. So double check the answer key for this one. And I will double check too, but in fact, I will check that right now, because this is actually a tricky question on this particular exam. And I'm not sure why they included that. So let me just check and see what they say the correct answer is. So let me scroll through the key really quickly. They made a mistake. So on the answer key, I'll show you. On the answer key that I'm looking at, and you can look this up, they made an actual mistake on this test. That's why this was so weird. There should be another sharp listed here, and the correct answer is the 1 chord. So on the answer key, it shows up as B, D sharp, and F sharp. Okay? And the answer key notes are correct. The actual exam note leaves off the sharp in front of the D. So that's interesting. Sometimes you find a mistake. That's why I was in a little bit of a quandary about that one, why it was written the way it was, because there should have been the D sharp there. Okay, so we've solved that mystery. That's okay. Let's go back to the actual test. So that second one, know that that's a mistake. That's a typo in the exam. It happens once in a while. So if that happens to you in an actual exam setting, you can go to the person or the people who are monitoring the exam room, and you can ask about that if you think that there might be a mistake. Okay, so we're going to do the next one. The next one, no mistakes. We have a treble clef chord, and it tells us the key that they want for us is E flat major. Okay, so again, we have to work this out, and we have to think about what is the key signature for E flat major so that we know which keys should be flat in this key. Well, if we go and draw our key signature and we know our E flat major scale, we have 3 flats. We have B flat, E flat, and A flat. Okay, that'll show up on your screen in just a minute. And then the chord that they give us is this on the exam: a C, an E flat, and a G. So the first thing we want to do is identify the name of that chord. So I look at the bottom note, which gives us the root note, and I can say that this is indeed a C minor chord. The middle note, the third, is made flat, so by design in the key. Okay, so we have a C minor chord there. Now, it doesn't really matter major or minor. It will later, right? Because they want to know Roman numerals, uppercase or lowercase. But what we have to do then is think about, well, what is this particular key, and how do we know which Roman numeral this is? Well, I'm going to draw another clef sign down here. You'll have to use your imagination a little bit. I don't know that I can move. There we go. Move that up a little bit. There we go. So I'm just going to draw the E flat major scale a little bit here with notes. There's our E flat. There's our F, G, A flat. We have the B flat. There's our C. I don't even have to draw the whole scale, because now I know, and these black notes are my flatted notes. That indicates flat. So now I can say here's the 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 3 chord, the 4 chord is the A flat. See that? That's an A flat major chord. The 5 chord is B flat major. And now C happens to be the 6th tone of the scale, and we have definitely a minor chord. If you were to draw the chords, obviously, on all of those scale notes, you would see a C minor chord. So our correct answer for this one, C minor, is the 6th chord in the key of E flat major. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, you can turn in your scale book to the E flat major scale, and on the opposite page of the scale is that top line of chords in every built on every tone of the scale. All right, our next one draw a little bit better here. We have F major is our key. So there's my key signature. Okay? And again, you should be doing this on scratch paper to figure this out, not on the actual exam. So the chord they give us to figure out here is a G, a B flat, and a D. All right? So what's one way to figure this out? Well, one way is to think about your F major scale and to know your cadence chords. And if it's one of the cadence chords, you can figure that out very quickly, one of the primary cadence chords. But it's not a 1, 4, or a 5 chord. It's not part of the cadence. So then what I can do is say, okay, well, let me draw the notes of the scale starting with F. And if I start with an F, I know that's my 1. G is the very next note in the scale, so I know that is the Roman numeral 2. If I were to continue, you know, I would have the next note in the scale would be an A, and the chord built on that would be an A minor chord. But I can stop here at the 2. I don't need to draw every single one, because my answer, it is the 2 chord. You don't even need to name the chord. We skipped that step, but if I wanted to name it, what's the name of the chord? Based on the root note, it is a G minor chord. You don't have to have that for this particular question. Last one. Hopefully you're getting the hang of this now. Our last one here is D flat major. So again, you may need to think about your scales. You may need to think about your circle of fifths here and have that handy. You can draw a circle of fifths on a piece of scratch paper and use that to help you. It's always good at this level anyway to memorize your circle of fifths and be able to draw it out on a piece of scratch paper. So you can test yourself at home with that. Okay, so I need to think about, well, what does my key signature look like for B flat major? Again, I'm treble clef. So I'm just going to draw this B, E, A, D, and again, if I'm thinking about my order of flats and sharps, I can draw it this way. Okay, so my next flat that I have to have in here is a G flat. All right, there's my key signature. Now the chord they give me on the test is an E flat, a G, and a B flat. Looks like that. So again, I have to think about my scale. A keyboard on your scratch paper will help you identify where D flat is. And again, if you know your scale, you can play it. And you'll find, well, that particular chord that they give you on the test is not one of the primary chords 1, 4, or 5. So again, I like to start with drawing. Well, let me back up. Let's just identify what chord this is. So again, I'm going to highlight this bottom note. And the name of the chord, of course, is E flat. E flat major chord. Nice sounding chord. So again, I'm going to start with the scale, and I know that the first tone of the D flat major scale is indeed a D flat. So that would be my 1 chord. My 2 chord here. So the next note in the D flat major scale is E flat. This one let me check the answer key for this one, because this one, yeah, they made a mistake on this one too. So on the answer key, this G in the middle should also be marked flat on the actual test. I'm surprised that there are this many mistakes. Usually there aren't. They're checked pretty thoroughly. So on the test, the chord shows up as an E flat major chord, but we know that's not really correct. We know that the 2 chord in a major scale is a minor chord. So it must be, so we go from D flat to E flat. That would be the next scale tone chord in the D flat major scale, and it would have to be E flat minor. So the answer has to be the 2 chord. So as you are looking at that test, in section K, the B major chord, the second one, is incorrect the way it's written on your test, and the last one is incorrect on the test. If you want to do those problems, you have to add a D sharp on the second problem and a G flat on the last problem to make those answers work out correctly. And again, double check the answer keys because sometimes you do find mistakes. All right, that was a lot for that section. We're going to move on to section L. And this is similar to what we just did, but takes it in the opposite format. So instead it gives you the key and it gives you the Roman numeral, and now they want you to draw the chord or the triad in root position. And notice they've changed clefs on us. So we're now in the bass clef. See if I can get those to show up a little bit. All right, so we have, for the first problem here, we're in the key of D major. And what they've given you is the Roman numeral 5. And they want you to draw the 5 chord in D major. So first of all, and again on scratch paper you can do this, you don't maybe want to do this on your actual test, but if you want to draw a little staff for yourself on scratch paper, that would be a great thing to do. And again, the key signature, it's helpful to know and put in an F sharp and a C sharp here, right? So I have my key signature on scratch paper so that I don't forget to put the sharps in front of the actual notes. If you fail to put in the sharp or flat notes here and indicate that, you'll get points taken off. Okay, so now I'm going to think about in D major. So below here, again, I'm using this as scratch paper. I'm going to draw just a simple clef sign. If I start on the note D down here, that's my 1 chord. So I can build a triad on that. And I know I have an F sharp there in the middle. That's my D major chord or my D triad. But we have to get to the 5 chord. So I'm going to go E would be my 2 chord. F sharp would be my 3 chord. G would be my 4 chord. And you could build triads on top of that, but I'm not going to take the time to do that. And that brings us to A. And now that's our 5 chord. Well, if we use that here, we can, and I actually would drop this down an octave. So I would take this A note that I just highlighted, and I would bring it down an octave when you actually answer this question on your test. And I would say, okay, it has to be an A chord, so for the actual answer that I'm drawing on my test, I'm going to draw an A, and then I'm going to draw my triad. Remember, I'm drawing a snowman, and I've made this big and thick and dark to show you that this is the answer. The rest of this is just my problem solving. And remember, on the test, they don't want you to have the key signature written. They want you to draw your sharps or flats in correctly in front of your chords. So there is your answer. The 5 chord in D major is A major. Okay? And it is part of the cadence. 1, 4, 1, 5. But remember that you're not writing it as an inverted chord the way you would see it in a cadence. You're writing it in root position. You have to follow the directions exactly, otherwise you will have points taken off. So there's your 5 chord. That's the correct answer. That's how you draw it on your test. That's number 1. Let's do the next one. The next one, again, they tell you bass clef. And for this example, they want E major is your key, and they want you to draw a 4 chord. Okay? So again, just for practice in my scratch paper, I am going to think about and draw my notes in the E major scale. Now E major, I know my key signature has F, C, G, and D, and I'm drawing this just to remind myself not to forget to put the accidentals in my chord if there are any that naturally occur. So my first note would be an E in the scale. That would be, if I built the chord, that would be an E chord, the 1 chord. My 2 chord would start on the F sharp. My 3 chord would start on the G sharp. And now here's my 4 chord would start on the A. So again, to draw my answer, I would bring this down an octave lower and I would draw it like this: A, C, E. It's a triad. Which note in there is to be made sharp? We have to have a sharp symbol in front of the C because it is a major key and it is a major chord, primary chord. Capital Roman means major chord, A major. So this is all we have to write. This is the correct answer for your exam. Now you remember the problem we did just before that was also, the correct answer was also an A major chord. Well, how can it be the same chord? Because we're in different keys and different Roman numerals. So the same chord can be a different Roman numeral in a different key. All right, next one. So now we're going to go to B flat major is the key they give you. They want you to draw the 1 chord. Well, you hopefully don't even need scratch paper for this one. You should just be able to draw this on the staff right away. But remember your key signature for B flat major. You may need to, again, use scratch paper. I'm going to do it down here. My key signature for B flat is B flat and E flat, right? So when I draw my 1 chord, again, remember you're in the bass clef, not the treble clef. Be careful with that. I'm drawing my B flat. I'm making a snowman. Okay, so I know that this B is flat. I'm going to put my flat symbol there because according to the key signature that I drew below, B, it has to be a flatted note. Do I have an E in the chord? No, I have a D and an F, so I'm done. That is my 1 chord. That is my answer. Easy one before we get to the hard one. Okay, next. Hopefully this is starting to look easier and feel easier for you. Now they want an F, key of F, and they want the 2 chord written in F major. We can do that. Again, think about your scale degrees and your Roman numerals. And if you use some scratch paper, this is very easy to sketch out. If you start with an F, and if you built a chord on that, that would be your 1 chord. I'm looking for the 2 chord, so the next note in the F major scale would be a G. If I built a chord on it, that would be my 2 chord. So for my answer, again, I would move this down an octave so that I don't have to rely on ledger lines and dealing with that. So what I would do for my answer is draw my G down here on the bottom line. I'm going to build a snowman. Okay. Now, what I didn't do actually at the beginning was I did not draw my key signature here, which there is a B flat in the key of F major. Forgot to do that, sorry. And I have to look now at this chord that I've written and look at the answer, the G, the B, and the D. Is there a B in there that needs to be flatted? Yes, there is. So that is the correct answer. It is a G minor chord, and that's what I write on the staff in order to get that question correct. Last one. Write my bass clef symbol. They want the key of A major, and they want you to draw the 3 chord, which will be a minor chord because we have a small Roman numeral number there, or small Roman numeral. And so again, I'm going to go just on some scratch paper, and I won't forget to draw my key signature here. A major, the key signature, we have to think about F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. And again, I'm going to use my scratch paper to think about my chords. There's my 1 chord starting on the A. My 2 chord would be a B. My 3 chord, which is the one they're asking for, would be not only C, but C sharp. Ah. Why is it C sharp? Because C sharp is in the scale. Okay, so if I want to build my chord on that, that's easy. So I'm going to do that up here and draw my answer. I'm going to build a snowman on the C sharp. And then I'm going to come back and look at my key signature. Do I have an F in the chord? No. Do I have a G in the chord? Yes. So that G up here also needs to be made sharp. And now I have my C sharp minor chord. And that takes you through section L. If you have questions about that, you can go into musictheory.net and work on chord identification more on your own time. We're going to continue, and this will be the last thing that we do. I'm going to share a different screen with you here now to show you about cadences. This is actually quite easy, and I will talk you through this last section here. I'm going to get rid of the iPad for a minute, and I'm going to share a different screen here. So before I show you the cadence information, so here's back at the theory exam. We're in section M. Circle whether the following cases or cadences in these major keys are authentic or half. This is very, very simple. So what they're doing is giving you bass clef chords, and if you were to play them, you would hear the tone, but you don't need to hear the tone. You can do the music theory behind it. So let's first of all learn what types of cadences there are, so that we can talk about, you know, what the answers are here and figure out the answers. So I'm going to flip over here to a theory page on musicnotes.com where it defines cadences. So here we are, and you don't have to know perfect and imperfect. We just have to know for the exam authentic and half. That's it. And authentic cadence is simply going from dominant to tonic in your chord structure. So you're going from a 5 chord to a 1 chord. That's an authentic cadence. If you were in the key of C major and you were going to go and you wanted an authentic cadence, you would go from a 5 chord to a 1 chord. Or you could play it as an inversion. 5, 5, 1. That's why when you play the chord cadences, it sounds so pleasing to end on the 1 chord. Anytime you go from the 5 chord to the 1 chord in any key, it's called an authentic cadence. So remember, 5 to 1 is authentic. Let's move down here to half cadence. A half cadence is any cadence that ends on the 5 chord, regardless of what comes before it. It could be 1, 5, it could be 4, 5, it could be 2, 5, 6, 5. Anything that ends in a 5 for this theory exam, this level of theory, is going to be a half cadence. So, for example, going back to the key of C, if you have a 4 chord that goes to a 5 chord, 4 chord to the 5 chord, that's a half cadence. Why? Because I ended on a 5 chord. Here's another half cadence. I'm going from the 1 to the 5. That's a half cadence because I've ended on a 5 chord. Okay? So authentic is 5 to 1. Half is anything that ends on a 5. So now I'm going to go back to the theory exam, and you should see that on your screen. So now what we have to do is figure out each key. Okay, we've got 3 key signatures here, 3 different ones. And we have to figure out what these chords are, and we have to label them. So I'm going to use the annotate tool here. And let's take a look at this first one. We have the key signature here indicates G major, correct? We have 1 sharp, which is an F sharp, and so we have G major. The first chord, however, is this chord. It is a D major chord. Well, how do we know what chord that is? Well, again, we have to think about what we just did for theory. We said, okay, what's the one, if you're in G major, what's the 1 chord in G major? Has to start on a G. G is the first tone of our scale. Well, so D is our root note on the first chord there. So what tone is D in the G major scale? Well, we can simply go G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, C is 4. D is the 5th tone of the scale. So that D major chord is a 5 chord. So you may want to label on your scratch paper a 5 there, Roman numeral 5. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So we go from a 5 chord to something else. Well, if we look at that, we know, oh, it is a G chord or the 1 chord. Why is it a 1 chord? Because we're in the key of G major. So I'm going to label this the 1 chord. Okay, so I'm going from 5 to 1. My chord progression is 5, 1. So now I have to answer, is this an authentic cadence or a half cadence? Well, if I've forgotten, well, I can flip back over here to this other screen and say, okay, an authentic cadence is any cadence that goes from 5 to 1. Aha, there's my answer, right? So now I can come back to my test. Now obviously you won't have that available to you during the test. You have to memorize that an authentic cadence is 5 to 1. So you're going to circle. I'll go back and annotate. I'm going to circle authentic because that is my correct answer. Okay? Let's take a look at the next one. We have a key signature of F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. Well, I know my key signatures, and 5 sharps is the key of B major. Okay, and my first chord here starts, remember we're in the bass clef, starts on a B. That is a B major chord. It is the 1 chord. So really quickly I'm just going to label this as the 1 chord. Okay. The next chord starts here on an F sharp. Sorry, we're in B major. So we have an F sharp major chord. Now I'm going to, again, think through my scale, my B major scale. And I'm going to go, okay, B is my first tone. That first chord is built on it. It's the 1 chord. My 2 chord is built on the C sharp. My 3 chord is built on the D sharp. My 4 chord is built on the E. My 5 chord is built on the F sharp. And so indeed, I have a chord progression here of 1 to 5. This annotate tool is a little harder for me to draw, but that is a 5. Okay, it's not a 5 to 1 progression. It's the other way around. So it cannot be an authentic cadence. But remember that a half cadence is anything that ends in 5. So the correct answer would be a half cadence. All right, last one. There are no sharps or flats in the key signature. So that indicates C major. Right? No sharps or flats, C major. Okay? So what we want to do is take a look at the very first chord here and identify the first chord. So I have a G chord here. So I have to think, okay, in C major, if I'm starting in the key of C major, that G chord is which chord in C major? Well, G is the 5th tone of the scale. If we build the chord on it, you're right, it's the 5 chord. So I'm going to label this first chord as the 5 chord. Okay, what is my next chord? C major. So we're going from the 5 chord to the 1 chord, because again, we are in C major. And again, if we go from a 5 to a 1, it has to be an authentic cadence. Okay? So doing this manipulation of keys and chords with Roman numerals might be a little bit new to you, so go into musictheory.net, do some chord identification and manipulation there, and that will help you give practice. The other thing you can do is write out your scales. Write out a D major scale, for example, in both clefs, draw your chords, and identify the Roman numerals beneath each one. And compare, and then further down the page do a G major scale or a B flat major scale. Draw the scale and then draw your triads on top of them, and that will give you good practice writing chords and identifying the Roman numerals in each scale. Okay, so that's as far as we're going to go on this particular theory exam, because the rest of this page is musical terminology. Sorry, that's going to mess you up a little bit because it didn't erase the marks, but you can go through terminology on your own, but then that is the last part of the exam. And if you have questions about terms or symbols, you can easily get a hold of me and let me know what you're having trouble with. So let me go back here. There we go. All right, so that is your quick video tutorial for the level 3 exam. So you should be able to get through the written part of the exam. There'll be another video for you for the ear training at level 3, which is considerably more difficult. And then you should review the terms for that last page on your own. If you have any questions, let me know, and I am happy to help you out, but definitely go to musictheory.net, or you can go to Tenuto on an iPad for more practice. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.